This is Ben with Shirk Photography, and I want to give you some tips and tricks on inserting your athletes into our templates. First thing, you're going to need to extract your subject. This is not an extraction tutorial, but there are a lot of different tools that you can use within Photoshop here to select your subject. You can choose to spend a little time doing it yourself, or there are a variety of different services on the internet that will extract it for you. We also offer a green screen extraction action that will extract your subjects from green screen. So it just depends on what you like. Anyway, let's insert this athlete into our template. Here is just an example of one of our templates. This is my bleachers vertical template. First off, all our templates have an insert athlete here folder where you're going to add your athlete. So here's, like, for example, my sample athlete. You're going to shut my sample athlete off, but when you click on this layer, it's highlighted. So now any new element that you bring into it will appear directly above this layer, yet still inside the athletes here folder, which is where we want. So now let's bring this athlete in. There are a variety of different ways to import them. I'm going to show you 3 or 4 here, and you can just pick what's going to be the easiest for you. First, one of the most simple ones may be just to copy and paste. If I have an extracted athlete without any other layers, I can just copy this layer and then paste it back into this one. So I can hit Control or Command C, Control C for PC, Command C for Mac. And then I go to this and I do Command or Control V. And they automatically paste into there, and you can position them where you want. One thing to be aware of with that technique, though, is if there are multiple layers in your original extraction. So sometimes, depending on your workflow, you may have an additional layer that helps, remove blemishes, or you may have an additional layer that adds detail enhancement to the subject. There are different things that you might have done. For example, if I colored this jersey in or something like that, and I needed this jersey number to be green because the coach said she was supposed to be green, something like that. If you only copy Control C or Command C, it's only copying this layer. It's not bringing the other layer in there. So once I Control or Command V, you can see that green enhancement layer there did not come along with it. So just be aware that Control or Command C will only copy the single layer. Alright, another technique for adding your athlete to a template is by grabbing the layer itself here on the Layers palette and dragging it into the template. In order to do that, the easiest way is to unclip the Photoshop document from the top here. So I'm just going to click on the text and pull down. It's going to allow these backgrounds to float independently here so I can kind of compare them side by side. Now I'm going to go to the template, make sure I have the sample athlete selected still. Now I go to my athlete and I'm grabbing the layers that I want. So if I just want the athlete, or if there are other layers that are important that I need to bring along also, I'm going to hold Control down for PC or Command down for Mac, click on them, and then drag them all at the same time into the Photoshop document and release. Now I can simply position her where I think looks best, and that fits pretty well. One thing to be aware of, though, is that as you're doing stuff later on and you decide to come back and maybe resize the subject, if I don't resize the other layers that are important with her, for example this retouching layer, then it's not going to follow where she's at. So for example, if I decided I wanted to move her down, obviously that green did not move at the same time. So anytime you're moving your athlete, make sure you have the other important layers selected also, and then move them where you want to go, or transform them to a different size, or make any changes you want. So both those techniques work well to insert a subject. There's also another way that I kind of prefer, and especially for volume photographers who have a bunch of subjects to extract, sometimes it's more efficient to go ahead and extract each of the individuals and save them to a file on your computer. I highly suggest saving any document that you spent some time on as a PSD document that you can then access later in case you discover some kind of error. So for example, once I've done any retouching on this and the extraction and the different layers, like this adjustment layer here for the color and stuff like that, I would save this as a PSD document in the client's folder. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go File and Save As. You can see the quick keys here are Shift Control S for a PC. And I'm going to save it to my folder on my desktop. I just named it A1 Extractions. I'm going to save it as a PSD. You could also save it as a PNG, but my typical workflow is to save it as a PSD. I'm going to save, and then I'd continue running through to the other subjects. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. Once I've finished, I'm going to bring up my template. So for example, we're going to put them in this template this time. I'm going to find my Insert Subject Here folder and click on my sample subject. I can shut that layer off. And now again, when I import the other subjects, they're going to appear directly above the sample subject layer. So here's that folder, and here's that sample subject. What I'll often do is have all my subjects saved here. So I'm going to click on the top of this folder here, this line here, and pull down, which is going to allow me to see Photoshop behind it and the template here. Then I select the Photoshop document I want, drag it up over top the template, and release. Your subject will appear within the template. And now I'm just going to use my transform tools that will automatically pop up with this technique to figure out what size she looks good as, and hit enter. And it's ready to go. Now a couple of nuances with this technique. The way we imported it by dragging a Photoshop document over top the template and releasing, it imported as a smart object. Now smart objects are unique and they have some benefits. So for example, if I were to have been kind of undecisive in the size of my subject, so if say I put her in like this, and then I like experiment and see if I want her smaller, hit enter and do some other things, whatever, and then like, oh, I want to make her bigger. If I transform her bigger, her resolution is only for this size. When I make her bigger in a standard layer, it will not increase the resolution. It's going to have only the resolution of the smallest size that was in there. However, with the smart object, it's going to keep the same resolution as the original file. So I can size her a lot of different times and never lose that resolution, which is pretty nice. Some other nuances with smart objects is that, for example, if I try to erase or do some kind of destructive action to this layer, it won't allow me to. So for example, if I'm trying to erase, I try to erase something, it'll tell me no, I can't do that. The same for painting. If I go to my brush and try to paint something, it'll actually often create a new layer, or sometimes it just won't allow you to paint. So just be aware that smart objects don't allow for destructive actions. However, one downfall of smart object is that they do tend to make the document size a lot larger. So for example, if I was doing this and had 12 girls in here, this would easily be above a gig in size, and it might slow your computer down. Often, once I'm done placing the subject and I know she looks good, I will rasterize the subject just to save space on this document. So I'm going to right click off to the side here and say rasterize layer. This will turn it into a standard layer and remove that smart object status. So it doesn't have to be rasterized. You only need to rasterize it if you are concerned about size and space, or if you want to perform a destructive action on that layer. Well, I hope these tips and tricks make compositing a whole lot easier. As you've seen with these templates, creating composites can be a lot of fun and pretty easy with the right tools and the right knowledge. We've got a ton of cool templates, actions, and brushes. They're here to help you dive right into the fun stuff and skip the boring setup. So go ahead and let your imagination run wild and create something that makes your subjects go wow. Happy creating!